Right, guys, the shit is happening. Finally, USA have struck terrorist training camps inside Syria. These are terrorist camps that in Syria that are backed by Iran. That's the first one. Second one, Rafah crossing in Egypt have allowed medical teams and medical aid into Gaza. Egypt, Qatar are in talks with Israel for a ceasefire and prisoner exchange. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, gone on today. So that's the USA has struck terrorist training camps inside of Syria that are backed by Iran. Prison swap is being arranged by Qatar. Aid has got into Gaza with medical teams and medical aid. I've got dressed and I'm cooking. And I've just put about 7 videos on my website. Hold on, I'm just updating the blog as well. So give me a sec. I'm just getting the press releases from Reuters. So bear with me. If I can get any if I can get any if I can get any video from the DoD on the Syria strikes, I'll post them on the website. If I can get any DoD, if I can get any DoD videos, I will. But it sounds like it's all happening today. Aid convoys going in with medical aid and staff, prisoner swaps, and America hitting Syrian terrorist trading camps. Syria is not going to start war with the US. Not in this lifetime, anyway. They're not that stupid, because we'll flatten Syria. Right, I'll be back. Just gonna check the food. Yeah. Right. What did I miss? Let me turn it up a bit.
Resolutions put before the Security Council. Most recently, a US resolution that was vetoed by China and Russia, and a Russian resolution that didn't pass. It is worth telling you there's extra action going on in the Security Council, because the 5 permanent members seem not be able to agree on anything. There are 10 members who only serve 2 years each on the Security Council, the so-called elected members. They are now working on to try to get something, a compromise of all the texts that perhaps something that everyone can support. And of course, if that comes in and it's a Security Council resolution, that is technically binding international law. Israel should follow it. But it's worth telling you there are lots of UN Security Council resolutions that exist for very many years that Israel does not obey.
James Bates, Al Jazeera's diplomatic editor. I'm told we've got to move on because there's so much news coming out of Israel and Gaza, but we'll speak to you again. Thank you very much. As we continue to take a look at what's going on at the UN.
Oh, it's all happening today.
Says that 9 of entered Gaza since the
I can't get it, but apartment block has been hit in Tel Aviv with damage, serious damage.
475,000 displaced Palestinians in UN shelters. Previously, 23 bakeries contracted to the WFP were feeding almost 250,000 people a day, but now just 2 are operating. That is due to a lack of fuel. The WFP also says that for every person who receives assistance, at least 6 more are in need and don't get it.
You can't tell us fuel and aid has got into Gaza with medical teams and then tell us that the hospitals are shutting down because they've got no staff or fuel. You know, Al Jazeera is so full of poo, it's unbelievable.
Outside even of Gaza in the last night, conditions are deteriorating every day and food is running short. So without the additional fuel supplies and also while we welcome the opening of the Rafah border crossing point last week, I think the number of humanitarian aid that has trickled inside Gaza on these convoys has been really very limited. So it's a very difficult situation. The amount that we are able to
It's not surprising that Al Jazeera have so many problems. They talk poo.
UN General Assembly in New York, where the representative of Jordan is currently speaking.
And it's essential to emphasize that in the event of the adoption, ES10 would only be temporarily adjourned immediately following the conclusion.
Oh, General Assembly holds special emergency session at the United Nations.
I thank the distinguished representative of Jordan. The representative of Jordan has moved that the debate on agenda item 5 be suspended at 3 p.m. today for the Assembly to proceed to the consideration of draft resolution A/ES10/L25, and that the debate would continue after the action on the draft resolution. It is my understanding that, without setting a precedence, and given the urgency of the issue, if the Assembly were to decide to suspend the debate on agenda item 3, at 3 p.m., for the Assembly to proceed to the consideration of draft resolution A/ES10/L25, and to continue the debate after the action on draft resolution. And if the Assembly were to adopt the draft resolution later today, that the 10th emergency special session would be adjourned temporarily following the conclusion of the debate on item 5. Is there any objection to the motion?
Object.
It is so decided. Before proceeding further, I wish to address the question concerning the majority required for the adoption of the draft resolution. In light of Article 18, paragraphs 2 and 3 of the Charter of the United Nations, is there any objection to taking action on resolution AES10L25?
Hey,
Two-thirds majority of the members present.
all happening today. USA struck Syria.
I see no objection. The two-thirds majority of members present.
Aid, medical and medical teams who got into Gaza. And there's talks of a prisoner swap.
The two-thirds majority of members present and voting is therefore also required for the adoption of any amendment.
Oh, this isn't the Security Council. This is the whole United Nations. So whatever happens here, nothing will happen because it means nothing. Only the Security Council can order Israel to cease.
You're listening to proceedings at the United Nations General Assembly. We're going to break down everything that's happening for you. We have Al Jazeera Affairs correspondent Gabriel Elizondo, who is standing by at UN headquarters in New York. And we've got the pleasure of having Al Jazeera's diplomatic editor James Bays with us in the studio. Gabe, I'll start with you. We listened to the last few minutes of proceedings. Explain to us what we heard. The speaker was saying the debate on the draft resolution on the Gaza war will be suspended, if I'm getting all this right, at 3 p.m. They're speaking Eastern time, so that's in over 4 hours. The debate will be suspended, and I believe that's when they would then proceed to a vote. But run us through the steps.
Yeah, that's right. Essentially what happened here was a procedural maneuver here. So let me just explain it. Today, there are more than 100 countries on the list that want to speak about this resolution. That could go on for a very long time on Friday, perhaps even into Saturday. So what the Jordanian ambassador did, who's sponsoring this resolution with 43 co-sponsors, is he asked the president of the Security Council, no matter where we're at 3 p.m. local time, that's 19 GMT, can we please request to stop the debate and take a vote at that time? With no objections, the president of the General Assembly, as you just heard, said yes. So essentially what you have here is pretty simple. They're basically saying we're going to go on with the debate. We'll go on hearing from speakers. But at 3 p.m. local
if it's routers,
that's essentially what
if the pictures I post to routers, it means they can be shared because there's no copyright. I'm registered with routers, so that means I can share their. That means I can share their posts.
Unlike the Security Council, where the Security Council and votes are taken, the ambassadors simply raise their hand, yes or no, or raise their hand if they want to abstain. Here in the General Assembly, there are 193 members. It's a lot of countries represented here, of course, the entire United Nations body, if you will. So when votes are taken in the General Assembly, it's done electronically. There's a big screen where all of the display of all the votes are put on a big screen, either green voting for, red voting against, or abstaining. All the ambassadors have representatives have something they can click.
My golly, is it happening all today? All happening today.
Gabriel, thank you very much. I turn to James. James, I think we need to remind our viewers, number one, what's actually the content that they're debating and that they will be voting.
No, I'm not getting this information from Al Jazeera. I'm actually getting it from boots on the ground.
Who's a very experienced UN diplomat. In fact, he's served most of the last 10 years in New York. He was the deputy ambassador, then went back to Oman, and now is the ambassador. Very experienced diplomat. And this is not just the Jordanians doing this. This is the Arab group, the Arab countries at the UN are all working on this together. So all of those Arab diplomats of all of those diplomatic missions from the...
Tell you, it's all happening today. Whoa. Oh. Wilco coming back to the high street as well. The boss of the range has bought them. Don't know whether they're going to be training under Wilco's or whether they'll be trading as the range. So we'll see.
So what they're trying to do is negotiate a resolution that as many countries as possible will...
It's all kind of happening today. Busy end of week. Very busy end of week.
But I think they're thinking that if they've got the weight of most of the world, and they're going to have every single country which has got to decide its position on this, if they get most of the world saying we must do it, it's a huge moral weight on Israel, but more importantly, perhaps, on the US, which is arguably the only country that can force, and even that's not entirely true, or not entirely clear.
Oh, they're going to come back before Christmas as well. Well, I hope they haven't emptied the stores.
Not in this specific forum, the General Assembly, but in a smaller forum, the UN Security Council, has been who to blame and what language to use around that. And the U.S. Wanted explicit condemnation of Hamas, and is part of the reason why resolutions, plural, multiple resolutions, have not passed. in the UN Security Council? Because there was disagreement around that. What does this text, this resolution say about that?
Well, actually, I wouldn't mind Dave on this because I'm not entirely sure of one detail, being away from New York at the moment, which is with regard to the amendment. Because there is a resolution that came up from Jordan and the Arab group, and they've watered that down to change the word ceasefire to durable truce. But also overnight, Canada put in an amendment with much tougher language on what happened on October the 7th.
Let's get to
Now, what I don't know is whether the Jordanians are accepting that amendment or whether that amendment will be voted on separately.
Gabe, I know you've been hearing what James is saying. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, that's right. What James is referring to there is, so overnight, the Jordanians and the Arab group made these changes to the resolution, right, that we've been discussing, that James has been discussing. Meanwhile, Canada issued an addendum separate from the resolution, and this addendum specifically condemns the terrorist attacks by Hamas that took place in Israel starting on 7th of October. Okay, let me break this down for you. So in the Jordanian and Arab group draft, the changes were condemns the attack on October 7th. The Canadians looked at that and said, that doesn't quite go far enough. We specifically want to mention Hamas. And so they issued this addendum that will, we think, be voted on separately before the main resolution by the Jordanians and the Arab group. That's essentially what's going on. A little confusing, but this is, again, it goes all back to language. And the U.S., Israel, and its allies specifically want Hamas put in this document. It was not. And so the Canadians are saying, essentially...
Yeah, like I said, even criminals get help and support. The Met police officer that got fired, £65,000 has been raised for him. So he's a criminal, and now he's getting backing. Now people are backing him. People are actually supporting criminals. So if I was a criminal, would people support me? So is this what I've got to do? Become a criminal to get help? So if I become a criminal, I get help. Yeah? So this criminal... this criminal who lost his job is now been given £65,000 by being a damn criminal. Absolutely hilarious. Like I say, you can all help criminals, you can all help the scammers, but you can't help me. Why is it? You know, I want someone to answer the question. Why can everyone else in the world get help, but I can't? Why is that? What have I done so wrong that nobody will help me? What have I done so wrong? You know, criminals are now getting support. You know, I don't want £65,000, thank you very much. I want £25 a week to pay my rent. That's it. Make it £50 a week if you want to include gas and electric. It's nonsense. You know, if I'm a criminal, the world will back me. If I'm a criminal, the world will back me, but because I'm an honest guy, nobody will help me. So we'll back criminals, we'll back rapists, we'll back drug lords will back sexual predators, but when it comes to a 60-year-old man living alone with no help, no support, no family, no friends, no nothing, I will back them. It's nonsense.
Can I jump in on that? Because it seems like a pretty important one. If you don't know the answer, we obviously don't want to speculate. But has Israel said, as a result of what they assess as al-Shifa being used by Hamas, have they said whether they would therefore consider it a legitimate target for attack?
They haven't said that. The Met police officer that was sacked, there's a GoFund for him, and so far it's raised £65,000.
I do want to say though that we have heard from Hamas. Hamas has basically denied any of this, saying that this is all propaganda. They've told us, Al Jazeera, this is misleading and false, and all Hamas leaders are not in the hospital, that they're not using this as a place where Israel has accused Hamas of using places like this with human shields. But, you know, this, just to give context with regards to this hospital, obviously we've covered it multiple times. The ministry in Gaza has said that around 50,000 civilians are in Shifa Hospital and the surrounding area. So this would be hugely problematic. And Israel, having been accused of genocide by many entities or war crimes even, are implying that Hamas using places like a hospital goes against international.
Oh, this is the fundraiser for the police officer that got sacked for an illegal search of 2 athletes. He purely racially profiled them, so they fired him. And now a fundraiser has raised £65,000 for him. Nonsense.
There are 100 Palestinians who are taken there every day and are still being treated as we speak. Sarah, Hamas has launched a barrage of rockets. Some of them, or one of them, I'm not sure, landed on Tel Aviv. What can you tell us?
Oh yeah, there's been a missile strike on Tel Aviv as well. Forgot to mention that one. Hit an apartment block. Don't know who fired the missiles, but I guess it was either Hamas or Hezbollah, I suppose.
On that front, okay, you know, it's less rockets, but it's still hitting targets as it has in Tel Aviv multiple times in the last few days. But just to kind of give you an idea on the stats, it actually hit a residential building in Tel Aviv. It hit, so there was 3 impacts, a construction site and a home. There were 3 injuries, not major, but it also hit Ashkelon, which, as we know, is one of the southern towns along that border with Gaza. Again, no injuries there. The damage hasn't been severe, but it still sends a message that Hamas is still insisting on sending these rockets, and it will put up a fight despite that war that's happening in Gaza.
Sarah Heirat, reporting from occupied East Jerusalem. Thank you very much for the latest on that. Also, an apology to some of our viewers. You will have seen some rather graphic pictures that we showed of Palestinians injured. That's just the nature of the pictures that we're getting from Gaza. And it's the nature of the events, frankly, in Gaza. But do apologies, as we do try to normally give you a warning on those. Still ahead on Al Jazeera, emergency services in southern Lebanon struggle to contain fires caused by Israeli attacks across the border. We'll have more from our correspondent on that. Do stay with us.
It's the weekend. Here's your forecast right across Asia. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is a quiet picture. Some of these clouds may produce a few showers through Pakistan's Sindh province, Punjab province as well, but not looking too bad. Sun cloud combo in the forecast.
Yeah, it's all happening today.
It's cleared away from India. Not much to talk about we do have some
Finally, the media have got some news to report.
as well.
Finally.
It's been pouring rain for days across parts of Thailand, through the north, through the south, on the Malay Peninsula as well. There has been some flooding, and now for southern Vietnam and northern Vietnam, getting some pretty good pulses of rain there over the course of the weekend. Western Yangtze, Western Pearl River Valley, that's where most of the rain is. River Valley, we have sunshine that allows the temperature to
Watch the TV for a minute while I go check the food.
Landslides in here, just 10% rain has been as of late. On this weather report, back in this part of Southeast Asia, there has also been some flooding right across Java Island, but those rains are starting to peter out, and it's our usual showers and storms right across Sumatra Island on Saturday. Okay, I'm out of time. I'll see you soon.
You are watching Al Jazeera. A reminder of our headlines. Al Jazeera's sources say negotiations on a ceasefire and a prisoner exchange deal between Hamas and Israel, mediated by Qatar, are progressing rapidly. There has been more bombing in civilian areas in Gaza, and the United Nations has warned nowhere in the Strip is safe. A team of doctors has entered Gaza through the Rafah crossing on the border with Egypt. The medics from the Red Cross are expected to boost relief operations. 10 trucks are also delivering medicine, food, and water. And we continue to follow the proceedings at the United Nations in New York. These are live pictures of the Jamaican speaker as the United Nations General Assembly considers a draft resolution that has put forward the possibility of a truce in Gaza. Let's talk about that with Sultan Barakat, professor of public policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University. So it looks like what the UN Security Council couldn't do, the UN General Assembly is trying to do. UNSC, 15 countries. UNGA, 193 countries, give or take one or two. But I think I'm right on that. So this is essentially the world saying, I'm just being told, by the way, we're always flipping live to what's happening at the UN. I'm just being told the Omani speaker will be live very shortly. But let's try to get this point in. The UNGA is weighing in on a possible truce for the fighting in Gaza. And there we are. I'm told the Omani representative is speaking live at the United Nations.
The Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the State of Qatar, the State of Kuwait, and my country, the Sultanate of Oman. We meet today at this emergency special session. Unfortunately, as the Security Council has been unable for days to take a united stance on what is transpiring in the occupied Palestinian territories, especially the Gaza Strip, and on the aggression by Israeli occupation forces against innocent civilians. This is a cause for concern for us all and must be condemned by the international community. A siege, starvation, collective punishment, cutting off
65,000 pounds would sort me out for life. I need about, I don't know, 10 grand, 11 grand, and that's my rent pay till I retire.
It is running roughshod over the principles of the Forest Convention of 1949, which compel Israel, the occupying power, to protect civilians in times of war.
65,000. If I took 65,000 pounds, someone did a fundraiser for me for 65,000 pounds, and I took 12,000 a year. That would last me 5 years, but I wouldn't take 12,000 a year because I wouldn't need to. So 65,000 pounds would give me £500 a month for that would give me £500 a month for 6 years, 11 years, which means I'm sorted for life.
The Palestinian people decided, just as other peoples that suffered from occupation, decided to end occupation.
Food's looking good, by the way. It's just stir-fried vegetables with high protein noodles, so it's nothing fancy. Food's probably rotten, but it's food.
Describing occupation and deem it to be an act of self-defense. Self-defense does not happen on occupied, usurped land. Mr. President, the GCC countries agree with the Secretary General of the United Nations that what's happening today in the Gaza Strip did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people has been subjected to a stifling occupation for 56 years. Its land has been swallowed by illegal settlements. Neither the Palestinian people nor any peace-loving nation of the world would accept the occupation of land by force. The Palestinian people will not accept any option that is not based on ending the occupation, liquidating colonialism, and the exercise by the Palestinian people to its inalienable rights, just as any other people of the world. I would like to stress that the GCC countries have full confidence in the Secretary General of the United Nations. We support his efforts to consolidate the principles of the UN Charter, international law, and international humanitarian law. We support his call to stability and security. We express our condolences over the passing of UN staff who became victims of the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip. The GCC countries stand with international law, international humanitarian law, and international legitimacy represented by the Security Council, the General Assembly, and the ICJ. We support the Arab Peace Initiative. We support a just and comprehensive peace that lays the foundation for a new chapter of peaceful coexistence and security for all peoples in the Middle East. A peace that ends decades of killing, of violence, persecution, and systematic violation against the above. The GCC countries calls upon all member states to vote for the draft resolution tabled by the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and to work on an immediate ceasefire, ensure the urgent delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza, including food, water, fuel, and medication without any obstacles, to stop the siege, the Israeli siege on Gaza, and resume supply of electricity and water, and to refrain from any plans to forcibly displace the civilian population. I thank you.
Give the floor and first the distinguished representative of Oman, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Qatar.
Mr. President, we thank you for the resumption of the 10th Special Emergency Session of the General Assembly. We align ourselves with the statement delivered on behalf of the Arab Group, the OIC, and the statement on behalf of the GCC member states. Mr. President, we all realize that the resumption of this Special Emergency Session comes at a critical time and context. A deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza Strip as a result of the Israeli attacks against innocent civilians have become catastrophic. They threaten to spiral in a manner that will threaten the security of the region and the world. In this manner, we express deep regret over the failure of the Security Council to undertake its responsibilities in accordance with the Charter. The Council failed to adopt any outcome, neither to adopt a resolution for an immediate ceasefire or a binding resolution regarding the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza Strip. As such, it is important for the General Assembly to undertake its responsibility in safeguarding international peace and security. according to the Charter and its resolution 377, Roman 5, titled Uniting for Peace. We renew our call for all parties for de-escalation and ultimately working for full ceasefire, the immediate release of all prisoners, particularly civilians, ensure the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza Strip, opening safe corridors that allow the delivery of humanitarian aid. We reaffirm again our condemnation of all forms of targeting civilians, particularly women and children. Our unequivocal rejection of the siege, the full siege imposed by Israel occupying power on Gaza Strip that deprives 2.3 million people, half of whom are children, of their basic needs, including water, food, medicine, and electricity. This comes at a time when the Israeli bombing has killed more than 6,000 victims in Gaza Strip, including more than 1,700 women and more than 3,000 children. We reaffirm our unequivocal rejection of the policies of collective punishment and efforts and attempts of forcible displacement of Palestinian people from Gaza Strip and forcing civilians to internally displace or take refuge in neighboring countries, which is a violation of international law. In light of this catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza Strip, and in addition to all the diplomatic and humanitarian and mediation efforts that Qatar is undertaking, we also take pride in adopting and presenting this draft resolution submitted by the Arab group titled Protection of Palestinian Civilian Population. Mr. President, the draft resolution represents the minimum obligations of member states.
Telling you, this is nonsense. People can back criminals, drug dealers, sexual predators, rapists, and everything else, but guys that are living alone, on their own, with no help, no support, no nothing, no money, no nothing. You think, this guy's been sacked, he probably got 6 months' wages before he was fired. And he gets thousands of pounds in aid. Telling you, it's nonsense. Yeah, I sit here in my house and I die because no one will help me. I can't even wash. I can't even think. I don't even have a shower in my house. My bathroom sink, if you look at the website, you can't even put a newborn baby in it. It's that small. But no one, as I said, no one cares.
In conclusion, Mr. President, Qatar continues to contribute to the ongoing diplomatic efforts to find a way out that will stop the bloodshed of our Palestinian brothers and ensure a sustainable political solution in accordance to the well-known terms of reference and steer the region away from spiraling into chaos and violence. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Qatar. And I now invite the distinguished representative of Egypt to take the floor.
Dennis Francis, Your Excellency Dennis Francis, President of the General Assembly, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for convening this 10th emergency special session of the General Assembly to consider the tragic situation in the occupied Palestinian territories, especially after repeated efforts to adopt a Security Council resolution have faltered for reasons known to all. Mr. President, It is very easy to deliver a standard statement in which we warn of the grave repercussions of the current crisis, in which we condemn the unjust Israeli aggression on Gaza, in which we address the brutality of this aggression and its violation of international law and human values, in which we call once again for protecting the Palestinian people.
Is this what I've got to do now? I've got to go out, commit a criminal offence, so that the world will help and support me. Is this what I've got to do? Have I got to go out, commit a criminal offence at 60-year-old with a perfectly clean criminal record, so that the world actually helps me? You know? So a policeman who is racist gets fired, the world rallies round him and raises £65,000 for him, which is probably about 2 years' salary. I'm telling you, it's absolutely nonsense, right? People can back the scammers and back the criminals, but people that are living in the house alone with no help, no support, no friends, no family. Do you know what it actually feels like waking up every day knowing you're totally alone in this world? No help, no support. And every phone call you get on your phone is some scammer trying to what's the word I'm looking for? Some scammer trying to make money out of your situation. The world knows I've got no money, yet they still try to scam money out of me. Yeah. It's disgusting. You know, you people really don't understand what it's like getting up every morning knowing that no one's going to knock on your door, no one's going to send you a letter through the post, no one's going to help you, and you've got to get by. I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. Is this what I've got to do now? I've got to become a criminal to actually get help, or a druggie, or a drunk, before someone will actually help me? Absolutely nonsense. I spent my whole life helping people from, well, I'll say from 7-year-old when I started junior school, but it was probably before even that, you know. Now I need help. Nobody wants to know. It's outrageous.
Is this really so hard? Second, the policies of besieging.
You know, I totally understand how the people of Gaza feel totally abandoned, but they haven't got. They've all got one thing I haven't. They've got friends and family actually helping them, because they're all in the same boat. So they're actually working together to help each other. Well, we're all in the same boat. None of us have got jobs. None of us have got income. None of us have got support. So why don't we all get together and start helping each other? Why are you people so dumb? Would you leave your own grandfather, great-grandfather, father, uncle, brother, nephew? Would you leave them in this situation? Well, from what I've seen and what I've heard, yeah, you would. You know, it's like my neighbour who died. Why was he left to live in the house on his own when he's got kids, I don't know how many, and he's got grandkids as well. Why didn't one of them move in? When my mother died, I moved in with my father, but then I moved back into my own apartment.
Its rights and the rights of the people of the region until we reach the absolute bottom. No to the forceful displacement. Is this really so hard? Of course, the Palestinian leadership has insisted time and again on providing protection, international protection, to its people that is languishing under the yoke of occupation, especially in light of repeated violations by armed settler militias. But the calls have fell on deaf ears. We cannot help but call once again before you all for providing this protection in the hope that this would awaken the conscience of those that are lamenting the loss of human rights.
You know, I don't need a fundraiser. For me, all I need is people on my website. People visit my website, I get paid. Simple as that. But now, I'm a single guy. I'm living alone. No one cares. You know, I'm not a criminal. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm not a drug addict. I'm not a drunk. So nobody gives a shit. And I'm not going to be polite. I'm not going to mix my words. You know, because I'm sick of it.
Would affect the interests of those who are stalling in calling for its end more than the interests of other countries. The reality is also that failure to come out of this crisis with a clear vision to revive the peace process, revive a serious peace process.
You know, I work 20 hours a day to try and get myself out of this situation, but nobody cares. Nobody wants to help me. I want to know why, but no one's actually got the balls to stand up, face me, and say, we're not helping you for this reason. We're not helping you for this reason. No, the world's just ignoring me because they're a bunch of assholes. You know, you're all coming in the room saying, oh, I'm not staying to be abused. Well, how about the abuse that I'm suffering? 4 years of hell I've been living. Well, actually, I've been living 60 years of hell, but we won't go into that.
Resolution under consideration today and to vote in favor for this resolution to achieve justice, to apply one standard aiming only at stopping the killing, at maintaining peace and security, at protecting civilians.
It's nonsense. You know, if I'd done something wrong, I'd understand it, but I haven't. You know, I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy trying to get by in life. But I came back from America, I moved to Immingham, and now my life is hell. 10 years of hell I've had. Biggest mistake I made in my life was moving to Immingham. It's nonsense. You know, it's, oh, I'm all right, Jack. Fuck the rest of the world. You know, you can all die. I'm scamming my thousands of pounds a month from the British welfare system, so I live in luxury while British citizens die in poverty with no help, no support, no friends, no family, no nothing. And I haven't done anything wrong to deserve it. If I was a sexual predator or a paedophile or a druggie or a drunk, I'd understand it. But no, they get help. I don't.
Israel is bombing residential areas in the north and the south of the Strip, and the United Nations says civil order has collapsed.
Yeah, I've got internet. Big deal. That's free.
Since the war began on the, we're going to go to Gabriel Elizondo, who's been waiting for us at the United Nations General Assembly as that special emergency session has been going on. Gabe, there have been a few changes ahead of the resolution being held and voted on today and the speeches that have been held. Just talk us through quickly.
You know, I can't even get views on my website. Why? Is there a memo gone out saying, let's give Ray hell? Let's give Raymond Duggan hell on earth.
Leading to a cessation of hostilities. So they're calling for a truce rather than a ceasefire now. Again, this is diplomacy, language matters, and also now the document is now explicitly refers to the attack of October 7th, but does not identify Hamas individually. So these are the two key aspects of it here in this new draft resolution that we.
You know, I haven't even got a clean room in my house. Because I don't have cleaning products to clean it. I don't have black bags to get rid of the rubbish. I can't take the rubbish downstairs to put it in the communal bin because no one will help me. Absolutely fucking hilarious.
I won't go through the play-by-play of what every speaker said, but what we did hear from is Oman, Qatar, and Egypt, and they all were united. Big picture here, they were all united in supporting this resolution. That should become as no surprise, of course. And you've been hearing the themes that we've been hearing from some of these countries over the last 2 weeks here at the United Nations when some of these resolutions, different resolutions, were debated in the Security Council. There's been 4 that have failed in the Security Council. And the big takeaway, I think, from what you're hearing from the first 3 speakers that we just carried live is you're sensing more urgency. That is the key difference here. It is no longer a matter of there might be a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We could be facing a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That was a language we were hearing from many countries a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Now what you're hearing is language that is saying we are facing a humanitarian crisis. Are we, meaning the people of Gaza? And really some language in here as well of speakers really concerned about if this is not dealt with, if a cessation of hostilities is not dealt with immediately by the General Assembly, this could get even worse.
Okay, but for now, thank you very much indeed. Obviously, that meeting is still going on, and we will be coming back to you as various speakers come up. But for now, Gabriel Elizondo at the UN, thank you very much indeed. We're going to get more on what's happening at the UN with our diplomatic editor, James Bays, and Sultan Barakat. He's Professor of Public Policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University. Welcome to you both. Thank you very much indeed. James, I want to ask you first about these amendments and changes to the wording that Gabriel was referring to there. You were saying before that the wording of documents like this is very closely scrutinized at the UN. Talk us through why that is and why this is so significant.
They pore over every single word in both the Security Council and General Assembly resolutions. Words matter, and there's a hierarchy of language in the UN. Different words mean different things. Yes, in reality, a truce and a ceasefire are pretty much the same thing. They mean the fighting stops, at least for a period. But I think in the hierarchy of language, ceasefire is seen in the UN as slightly more permanent than truce. That's why they've substituted truce for ceasefire. What they're trying to do, those that are put forward this resolution, which is Jordan, on behalf of the rest of the Arab group, the Arab countries of the United Nations. What they're trying to do is get as many votes as possible for this resolution. It's not binding on anyone. Security Council resolutions are binding in international law. General Assembly resolutions are not, but it will show what the world thinks about this. All 193 countries get the chance, it's electronic voting, to press a button and show what they think. So it'll be taking the temperature of the world. We're actually, in 4 hours' time, going to have 2 votes. The vote that's on this, which is the Jordanian Arab Group resolution, that they've now watered down perhaps a little bit by putting the word truce, durable truce, in the place of ceasefire. And then another amendment that's been put forward by Canada, that came in overnight. They'll vote on that too. That amendment is adding a paragraph that unequivocally rejects and condemns the terrorist attack by Hamas on the 7th of October. That's been added to the resolution if that amendment, when that amendment is voted on, if it's voted on in favour. Complicate things even further. Speaking to watchers of the General Assembly, very closely people I've been speaking to, there is the possibility on the floor of introducing further oral amendments when the vote happens. So this is going to get exciting.
So we're expecting the vote to be happening around about 19 GMT, that's 3 p.m. local time, I think. Sultan, I want to ask you, are there any historical precedents where, as James was pointing out, this is a non-binding resolution, but is there any historical precedent where it gives us an indication of the kind of influence that this kind of resolution would have on a situation like this? Are people like those, is Israel and those supporting Israel likely to be influenced by what is happening here?
No, it's non-binding, but morally it is important. And I think part of the reason for including some amendments to the resolution now is to try and widen the base of the countries that are in support of this resolution, particularly as European and possibly even New Zealand and Australia and other countries signing up to.
What did I miss?
The language, as James was saying, is very, very important. Ceasefire is usually associated with states. So no one, and some of those countries do not want to even consider Hamas as being a state actor. So a truce is a non-state actor language. And the humanitarian is obviously, there is a purpose for this ceasefire or this cessation of hostilities. So now it's just for a humanitarian purpose. If Hamas goes on to resupply or develops diplomatic contacts and so on, then it's in breach of this cessation of hostilities. So that is also important. And to bring those countries on board, there's a, if you like, a spectrum or continuum of positions. The real far is the United States and Canada, who sees Hamas and Al-Qassam Brigade all as terrorists. And then in the middle, there are states like New Zealand and a few other states that draw a distinction between Al-Qassam Brigade and Hamas. But the vast majority of the world states do not recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization, but as an organization that's part of a legitimate defense of its own land and against occupation. So I think given all this, you see that there is a lot of discussion around.
Yeah, Sultan, James, please stay with us because we've got more, of course, coverage of the UN General Assembly emergency session. But we're going to move on just for a moment. A team of doctors has entered Gaza through the Rafah crossing on the border with Egypt. The medics from the Red Cross are expected to support relief operations. 10 trucks are delivering medicine, food, and water. The UN and Red Cross are appealing for the immediate delivery of fuel. Well, Tarek Abu Azum is in Khan Yunis, Gaza. Tarek, just please update the situation regarding some of that medical aid that's being delivered.
Yes, today the Gaza Strip has witnessed the entry of 10 medical trucks to the besieged territory, carrying different kinds of medical supplies and food, water, as well. The medical till now, the number of the humanitarian trucks that enter the Gaza Strip has reached 84 since the beginning of this round of fighting between Gaza and Israel. These kinds of medical and humanitarian supplies considered to be limited in comparison with the basic and daily needs of the besieged territory. More than 2.3 million Palestinians are consuming more than 200 trucks per day in order to match their needs. The ongoing closure of the Israeli borders and the complete prevention of fuel entry to the Gaza Strip might exacerbate the current situation in more critical levels.
Let me ask you about the situation with regard to the delivery of fuel. Obviously, medicine is vitally important, food is vitally important, but the key thing that you have been reporting on, our colleagues have been reporting on for them, ever since this conflict began, was the necessity of having fuel to keep things going. Is there any indication about fuel supplies?
Did they do a fundraiser for the Al Jazeera reporter that lost 4 members of his family and he still carried on working, even though his heart's broken? Why do criminals all stick together? So now somebody has scammed the British public out of £65,000 for a criminal, to support a criminal. Why is it criminals all stick together? It's like the scammers online and the hackers. They all stick together to scam as many people as possible. And it's just now how criminals work as well. They all stick together to back each other.
To allow to the access under the flow of fuel to the territory.
Tarek, when these supplies do get to Gaza, and we're well aware that it's not nearly enough, what is the process that people have to go through in order to be able to get things like bread and flour, the basics that they need?
Well, this process is entirely complex. People are forced to line up for long hours in order to have a few loaves of bread. Meanwhile, they are no longer able to make at their houses due to the ongoing blackout of electricity. Also, there are need to the bakeries do not allow for Palestinians only just every person to take a quota of 3.5 kilograms of bread that cannot really barely match the needs of their families, especially the Palestinians, or the majority of Palestinians' families are considered to be extended families. And also people inside the territory are trying to depend on the local consumption and the local products of the markets in order to match needs. So sooner these kinds of products will run out, so there's no any kind of further shipment of be delivered to the besieged territory. Also, the situation of the shelters that are created, the United Nations, are really catastrophic. Schools and even classrooms are overcrowded with displaced people who really evacuated their houses in the north of the Gaza Strip and move forward to the central areas. They are really facing such catastrophic consequences in terms of having access to water, and they are much wrecked. There are growing concerns about the spread of infectious diseases among those people due to the overcrowding number of citizens displaced from their houses.
Tarek, thank you very much indeed. Tarek Abos bringing us up to date from crime news in Gaza. Well, the UN says nowhere in Gaza is safe and that its entire aid operation is collapsing. The head of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees says the trickle of aid that's been allowed in is nowhere near enough for the millions of Palestinians in need. Ashima Khabar reports.
This is live in Gaza. Traumatized families rushing their loved ones to overcrowded hospitals. As Israeli airstrikes surge, so does the number of Palestinian casualties. This mother clings to her child as she is carried to the operating room. The father and his son are rescued from under the rubble. He has no idea if the other members of the family have survived. Different faces, the same tragedy, retold again and again by survivors.
Why is Al Jazeera putting fake news that's days old, weeks old?
I wish I had never had children. Don't send us food. Send us coffins instead.
Well, that's what I keep saying. Why would you have children in a war zone? Why would you give birth to children knowing they may not even see their first birthday, let alone 21?
Volunteers relay harrowing stories about what it's like inside Gaza's hospitals.
What I see in the minute is different. The injuries are unusual, with severe pains up to 4 degrees. This pain has not mentioned in the medical books, not studied in the medical programs. I did not expect to feel them in my life.
Israel is bombarding several areas of the Strip, from Gaza City in the north to Khan Yunis in the south. People are desperate for shelter, but for now, their main concern is rescuing loved ones trapped under the wreckage of what was once a home.
It's like Hiroshima. There is no humanity left in the world. No one is standing by us. We haven't slept since yesterday, and we haven't been able to pull anyone out. There were 70 to 80 people in this house. Young children are still under the rubble.
Humanitarian aid agencies warn civil order is collapsing.
Basic services are crumbling. Medicine is running out. Food and water are running out. The streets of Gaza have started overflowing with sewage. Gaza is on the brink of a massive health hazard.
Bodies pile up at makeshift morgues. Families have only a few minutes to identify their relatives and say goodbye before the next airstrike hits. Hashim Al-Bala, Al Jazeera.
The World Food Programme says 9 of its trucks have entered Gaza since the Rafah crossing was opened on Saturday, but is warning that to reach the 1 million Palestinians in need, 40 trucks a day to enter Gaza. The WFP says it's provided emergency supplies of canned tuna and bread to 475,000 displaced Palestinians in UN shelters. Previously, 23 bakeries contracted to the WFP were feeding almost 250,000 people a day, but now just 2 are operating because of a lack of fuel. The WFP says that for every person who receives assistance, at least 6 more are in need. Abira Tifa is the senior Middle East spokesperson for the World Food Programme. She describes some of the challenges for the teams on the ground in Gaza.
Definitely, Gaza is grappling with the lack of basic supplies and severe fuel shortages that's really going to threaten bringing all humanitarian operations into a halt. Food and water are running out, and people are facing increasingly desperate conditions. Also, outside even of Gaza, in the West Bank, conditions are deteriorating every day, and food is running short. So, without the additional fuel supplies, and also while we welcome the opening of the Rafah border crossing point last week, I think the number of humanitarian aid that has trickled inside Gaza on these convoys has been really very limited. So it's a very difficult situation.
You know, I can't even go across the shop and buy things like eggs, butter, cheese, milk, coffee, sugar.
To provide food for 1 million people, we need 40 trucks of WFP food.
Do the women have a choice there? What women and where?
Border opening, we need much more. These trucks needs to be scaled up. It needs to be many more than the 20 trucks of every day.
The Israeli army's prevented.
Do the women have a choice there? From Tony. No idea what you're talking about. What do you mean? Do women have a choice where?
Well, if you look over at the compound of Al-Aqsa, normally on a Friday you get somewhere in the region of 40 to 60,000 people coming. The prayers are over for the day, so it's quite empty. But there was only 5,000 people there today. And the reason for that is in West Bank towns there are blockades. So the police are stopping.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Here. And then around the city itself, it's very difficult for anyone to get close to the mosque. Now, we thought that maybe just young people were being discouraged, but pictures from inside the city, on one of the alleyways leading to the mosque, men in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, they're being pushed away by the police, telling them they're not getting to the mosque.
Well, women don't get into the position of where men force themselves. They are an Arab country. To rape a woman in an Arab country would end in death. If that woman filed a complaint saying the man forced himself on her, then that would be rape and he would be killed. It's an Arab country. No gays, no sex outside marriage. So, yeah, of course they have a choice. No means no. Woman files a complaint in an Arab country. That guy's in very serious trouble. he doesn't go to jail for 25 years for rape like in the UK or USA or Europe. You'll either have it chopped off or he'll be stoned to death outside the village gate. Of course they have a choice.
Hamas's goals are single-minded and they're sickening. They're determined to destroy Israel and kill Jews. And let's be clear, Hamas has never cared about the genuine needs or concerns or safety of the people it claims to represent. And Hamas has no respect for the rule of law or human life. To them, Palestinian civilians are expendable. To them, Palestinian civilians are human shields. And it really is despicable and it's cowardly.
Of course they have a choice.
Palestinians must be protected. The lives of UN personnel and humanitarian workers and journalists must be
protected.
And we mourn the loss of every single innocent life in this crisis. Every single one.
Remember, guys, the food
we must not look away. And we must not become numb to the pain and the suffering of people like Wad al-Dadu, a Palestinian journalist whose wife, son, daughter, and grandson were killed in Gaza this week. And my heart breaks for Wad. My heart breaks for all of the innocent civilians who are caught up in this crisis. Colleagues, the United States has made clear in both public and private conversations that as Israel exercises its right and indeed its responsibility to defend its people against the terrorist group, it must do so in line with the rules of war. There are no law-free zones in war. International humanitarian law must be respected throughout Gaza and the region by all actors. President Biden and Secretary Blinken, in partnership with the UN and regional actors, are engaged in direct diplomacy to help protect the lives of all civilians and to ensure humanitarian assistance can flow into Gaza. As humanitarian organizations have stressed, the needs of Palestinians in Gaza are dire. So many families lack access to food, clean water, and other essentials. And hospitals need fuel to keep patients alive. This is a humanitarian emergency, and we're doing everything in our power to save lives. The United States is the single largest donor to the Palestinian people, having contributed more than $1 billion to UNRWA since 2021. And last week, President Biden announced an additional $100 million in humanitarian assistance for the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank. While in the region, President Biden also secured an agreement with Israel, Egypt, and the United Nations that allowed aid to start reaching Gaza. But much more needs to be done. Much, much more is needed, and it's needed urgently. We continue to encourage Israel, Egypt, and all partners to take concrete steps to alleviate this humanitarian crisis, just as we continue to urge and encourage all member states, particularly those with the greatest capacity to give, to help us meet the UN's appeal for the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Colleagues, time is of the essence, and lives hang in the balance. As you'll notice, two key words are missing in the resolution before us. The first is Hamas. It is outrageous that this resolution fails to name the perpetrators of the October 7th terrorist attack. Hamas. Hamas. It is outrageous. Another key word missing in this resolution is hostage. This resolution makes no mention of the innocent people, including citizens of many of you in this room, many of you here today who have citizens who are being held.
Right, I'm just going to eat, guys. I'll be
and other
10
terrorist
minutes.
groups. These are omissions.
They'll post the food to the
and they
website.
give cover to and they empower Hamas's brutality. And no member state should allow that to happen. You should not let it stand. And that is why we have co-sponsored an amendment put forward by Canada that corrects these glaring omissions. This amendment is straightforward and it's unobjectionable. It calls on us to condemn Hamas's terrorist attacks on October 7th. And it calls for the immediate and unconditional release of hostages. It should be easy. This is the bare minimum that we would hope to see in this resolution. We urge all member states to vote yes on this amendment. The General Assembly must send a clear message to the world that we stand against all acts of terror and that we stand with all those who are being held hostage. We believe the UN Security Council, a body charged with maintaining international peace and security, must send the same message. And that's why this week we put forward a Security Council resolution that garnered the support of the majority of the Council. In drafting this text, we solicited input from all Council members, including Russia and China. And the product of our consultations was a balanced and strong resolution that, among other things, condemned Hamas's terrorist attacks, called for the immediate and unconditional release of hostages, stressed the urgency of addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, including through humanitarian pauses, and made clear that we must keep the hope of a two-state solution alive. Again, this was a strong and balanced text, but unfortunately, Russia and China decided to veto this resolution. And while the United States worked to forge consensus around a balanced product, Russia has put forward bad faith, one-sided resolutions without any consultations whatsoever. Colleagues, one-sided resolutions, whether they are put forward in the Security Council or the General Assembly, will not help to advance peace, not when they ignore the facts on the ground. One-sided resolutions are purely rhetorical documents that seek to divide us at a time when we should all be coming together. And we must not cling to long-standing lines of division. As President Biden said yesterday, there's no going back to the status quo as it stood on October 6th. We must not go back to the status quo where Hamas terrorizes Israel and uses Palestinian civilians as human shields. And we must not go back to a status quo where extremist settlers can attack and terrorize Palestinians in the West Bank. The status quo is untenable and it is unacceptable. This means that when this crisis is over, there has to be a vision of what comes next. In our view, that vision must be centered around a two-state solution. Getting there will require concerted efforts by all of us, Israelis, Palestinians, regional partners, and global leaders, to put us on a path for peace, to integrate Israel with the region while insisting that the aspirations of the Palestinian people to be part of a more hopeful future. We deeply regret that the resolution now under consideration is detrimental to this vision. But while this resolution is deeply flawed and does not meet this moment, the United States will continue to work with all member states to chart a future where Israelis and Palestinians have equal measures of security, freedom, justice, opportunity, and dignity, and a future where Palestinians realize their legitimate right to self-determination and a state of their own. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United States for that statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative.
So you're watching Al Jazeera, and we're bringing you live coverage of the General Assembly Emergency Special Session Day 2, which is discussing the situation in Gaza. That was the US Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, speaking. As she was speaking, in the bottom left-hand corner, now we can see them full frame. These are pictures, live pictures of the skyline in Gaza, and that we are watching a significantly large bombardment that's been going on for the last possibly 3 or 4 minutes now, lighting up the sky across Gaza. You can probably see the plumes of smoke that are floating into the sky above the skyline now as the attack has been going on, as the US Ambassador to the UN has been speaking. Some of the explosions carrying on there on the far skyline. I want to bring in Gabriel Elizondo at the UN headquarters. He's been listening to everything that's been going on as Linda Thomas-Greenfield was speaking. Gabe, in that speech there, we heard criticism specifically of Hamas. We heard the need for humanitarian aid to be going into Gaza. She said 2 key words are missing from the resolution. The resolution. The first word is Hamas, and with regards to what happened on October the 7th, the attack that it carried out, and also no mention of what she described as hostages. What's your take on what she was saying?
Yeah, that's really what you just heard there. Let's go through each of those briefly. She said 2 key words missing. Number 1 is Hamas. The U.S. ambassador saying that it's outrageous that in this resolution the word Hamas is not mentioned. I will say, let me address that. The Arab ambassadors say that they do not want to make this document political. That is why they say there is not a need to include the word Hamas in there. They do have in the resolution condemning the attack on October 7th and everyone that was killed, but the actual word Hamas being in the document is something that the US and to a lesser degree the UK has been very hung up on now for well over a week. The other issue, quite frankly, is a little confusing. She says that there's no mention of the word hostage in this resolution. She's right. However, the changes that were made in the resolution, I've got it right here, it calls for the immediate and unconditional release of all civilians who are being illegally held captive. So she clearly wants Hamas put in there, or I'm sorry, she wants a hostage put in there. Little confusing why, but clearly that's one issue for her. It's important to point out as well, and this is a little bit of a new posture by the U.S. She started in the beginning of her speech saying that all lives are important, the lives of innocent Palestinians, humanitarian workers, and journalists must be protected. The U.S. Identifying Palestinian lives 3 weeks into this conflict and now explicitly referencing Palestinian lives that are being lost, something that they weren't doing just a week or 2 ago. Also, I should point out in conclusion, referencing our Al Jazeera colleague, Wael Adwood, who lost several family members because of Israeli bombardment. She's saying that she mourns the life, and the U.S. mourns the loss of the life of his loved ones from our Al Jazeera colleague there. Clearly, though, the U.S. has addendums to this resolution that they want to see put forward. They want Hamas put in it, and they also want the word hostage put in it as well.
Gabriel, for now, thank you very much indeed. We're going to be coming back to our coverage, of course, of the UN special session as it's going on. We're going to be speaking to you when that happens. For now, thanks very much indeed. And of course, we're watching, for those of you just joining us, a very significant size of attack on on Gaza City. This is the nighttime skyline of Gaza. It's about 6:39 p.m. in Gaza at the moment, and we have seen a succession of explosions light up the sky over Gaza as we've been talking. We're going to get more on this with our diplomatic editor, James Bays and Sultan Barakat, who's Professor of Public Policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University. They've been with us whilst we've been covering this. James, one thing that did occur to me when I was listening to Linda Thomas-Greenfield, there was no mention of a ceasefire, no mention even of a temporary truce.
No, she didn't mention it, although she is now saying, and this is significant, that she is co-sponsoring the Canadian amendment. This is the Canadian amendment, which adds the bits that she says was not in the resolution, which is mention of Hamas and mention of the word hostages. That is in the Canadian amendment. Now, the Canadian amendment doesn't take anything out of the Jordanian Arab resolution. So if the US was to get its way and this Canadian amendment was to go in there, then everything else in the resolution would stand. And that, I think, would be interesting because among the things it asks for is immediate, continuous, sufficient and unhindered provision of essential goods, services to civilians. And it specifies water, food, medical supplies, fuel and electricity. So if this US-Canadian amendment was passed and this resolution then was passed, that would mean Israel was obliged by the whole of the world and the US voting for it to restore the electricity and the fuel supplies in Gaza. I think that is pretty significant, potentially, if that scenario were to emerge. And just one other thing to say, I mean, a couple of things to say more on this. The mention of Wael, our colleague, whose family, many members of his family were killed in recent hours, I think that is interesting coming from the US ambassador. I know Linda Thomas-Greenfield pretty well. She was pretty moved, I can tell you, by the death of our other colleague, Shireen Abu Akleh, because she actually was interviewed by Shireen in the region before Shireen's death. I think it's interesting that she included that, but it's also worth saying she says that Israel must comply with the rules of law. She made that very, very clear. And what, of course, she doesn't pronounce on is whether they are doing so. And as she speaks, you saw real time evidence of what is going on the ground. In fact, you can see it now, the bombs continuing to land in Gaza. Worth reminding our viewers that we've got one of the heaviest bombardments anywhere in modern history taking place. Is this legitimate defense under international law? Most international lawyers do not think so. 7,000 people dead. We're coming to the 3-week mark and we've got over 3,000 children dead. That is Israel killing, on average in the last 3 weeks, 1,000 children a week.
So, while we're also watching these astonishing pictures coming from the skyline of Gaza, I want to ask you about the fact that Linda Thomas-Greenfield seemed to take pains to stress the US involvement with regards to providing aid and money for the Palestinians. Particularly, she said, she described it as the US being the single largest donor to the Palestinian people through the Palestinian Agency of the UN. Do you think, given what we're seeing, given the nature of the speech that she's given, does this give you any indication that the US is, if nothing else, trying to widen its perception, if you like, of what is going on in Gaza as the situation on the ground starts to shift?
I mean, history tells us that these kind of speeches, they're always done with an eye on the international community and an eye on the domestic politics. And you can see now domestically there is a rising contempt to the way the United States has blindly supported Israel over this. So by taking the credit of allowing these 10 trucks a day and giving it directly to Biden, this is one way of satisfying, I think, some political opinion within the United States. What I found very interesting in what she was saying, aside from the reference to Wael Dahdou's family, as in the case with Shireen, I don't think she's moved because just another journalist. And there are tens of journalists being killed by Israel in Palestine. It's a sign that they understand the power of Al Jazeera network. So they're trying to sort of, work into the system, some kind of sympathy alongside Al Jazeera. What I found also maybe important to highlight, they don't seem to have read the recent amendments in the Hamas charter that were introduced back in 2017. I mean, she is repeating, parroting what Netanyahu has said before about Hamas intending to kill all the Jews, etc., etc. That has no direct reference in the charter. And as you know, in 2017, there were some reforms, updates. This is the time when also the leader was elected as Haniya within Gaza, moved from Qatar and so on. So there are a lot of things that have happened that it may be just convenient for the FD to place it into context. I mean, these amendments took place.
I thought I left you at the UN. I didn't think I left you in Gaza watching bombs go off. Sorry about that, guys. I was watching downstairs because I was eating.
So her own government was in very difficult position with Netanyahu and his group, and they understand 100% how extreme he is and his group and his local politics. And so I don't think they genuinely agree with him. The problem now is that in the build-up to domestic elections, they have to satisfy the Israeli lobby back in Washington, and they're taking all these positions.
I'm all right.
I suspect when it comes to voting, they probably and Canada will vote against the resolution, and but the majority of the countries, and I hope many Europeans.
I don't need social services help. I need money help. I need people on my website so I can earn money.
But I want to bring in another story. The Israeli army is accusing Hamas of using the infrastructure of the biggest hospital in Gaza, Al-Shifa.
Social services aren't going to do anything. All social services will do is laugh at me.
What more do we know about these allegations?
Unless they're going to come and clean my house.
Well, the Israeli army spokesman released this statement accusing Hamas of using Al-Shifa Hospital, the biggest hospital in Gaza, as its central command. It's basically...
So you didn't see any of the bombs going off? So you're telling me you can't see the telly?
Underneath the hospital, he even brought out video, and they've released this video, the 3D video that's been put together to prove to the world and I guess the international community that Hamas is using hospitals, not just this one, but across Gaza, and in their words, using patients
Forgive me for interrupting you. We're going to go back to the UN General Assembly special session, which is being held on Gaza at the moment. I apologize for interrupting. The European Union ambassador to the UN, Osku, is going to be speaking. We're going to listen in.
Montenegro, Albania, Ukraine, Republic of Moldova, Andorra, Monaco, and San Marino. Mr. President, colleagues, first to you, Mr. President, I want to thank you for convening this emergency special session. As the situation...
This is I believe this is the whole of the United Nations General Assembly, which means anything they say will have no effect on Gaza whatsoever, because unlike the Security Council, the United Nations General Assembly, they can't say anything, really. Everything they're saying now is nonsense. It's the Security Council that can order Israel to do this. But as normal, Israel just tell them to get lost. Anyway, let's listen.
We know that efforts are still underway.
Russia, China, and the UAE vetoed US resolution on Gaza.
The EU's position is well known. The EU reiterates our condemnation in the strongest possible terms of Hamas for its brutal and indiscriminate terrorist attacks across Israel. The use of civilians as human shields by Hamas is a particularly deplorable atrocity.
Well, as you can see, this is Israel's response to a ceasefire.
In line with international law and international humanitarian law, we reiterate our call on Hamas to immediately release all hostages without any preconditions. The EU reiterates the importance of ensuring the protection of all civilians at all times in line with international humanitarian law. It deplores all loss of civilian life. We express our gravest concern for the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza, and we call for continued, rapid, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access and aid to reach those in need through all necessary measures, including humanitarian corridors and pauses for humanitarian needs. We will work closely with partners in the region to protect civilians, provide assistance, and facilitate access to food, water, medical care, fuel, and shelter, ensuring, of course, that such assistance is not abused by terrorist organizations. We recall the need to avoid regional escalation and to engage with partners in this respect, including, of course, with the Palestinian Authority. The EU is ready to contribute to reviving a political process on the basis of the two-state solution, including through the Peace Day effort, and welcomes diplomatic peace and security initiatives.
First thing they need to do now is get medical ships off Lebanon, Israel, Gaza, and Egypt's coastline. So basically, fill the med from Turkey right down to Egypt with medical ships, evacuate all the 35 hospitals in Gaza, evacuate all the injured in Israel, Lebanon,
in addition to the points we made,
and of course an immediate cease.
Will guide our approach to the draft resolution put forward. The purpose of the UN is to overcome divisions. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the European Union for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia.
Oh, and by the way, I can stream this live because it's news and it can't be copyrighted. Because all Al Jazeera is doing is taking it from Reuters, and I'm registered with Reuters. So.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Mr. President, we align ourselves with a statement delivered by Mauritania on behalf of the OIC member states, Jordan on behalf of the Arab group, and Oman on behalf of GCC member states. Mr. President, allow me at the outset to thank you for the resumption of the 10th Special Emergency Session of the General Assembly, a session that is convening in the light of the catastrophic conditions and circumstances faced by the Palestinian people as a result of this military disproportionate.
Right, anyway, I'm back now, so you see what he said.
In light of these critical and painful conditions, and following the dangerous development in Gaza Strip, thousands of civilians.
Yeah, I'm fine, Greg. I was downstairs eating.
Hospitals, schools, shelters, and infrastructure are bombed.
I need money, not social services.
Create only a humanitarian catastrophe, but have also dire consequences and repercussions to the security of the region and the world. We have
this is weird.
condemned the targeting of civilians by any party. We called for a ceasefire, stop the bloodshed, lift and immediate lift of the siege, the release of hostages, and provide humanitarian assistance and support to those affected. We also condemn the attempts at forcible displacement and policies of collective punishment against the population in Gaza, including the starvation of civilians as a weapon of war, the prevention of access and delivery of humanitarian aid to civilians, or depriving them of their basic needs, life-saving basic needs. We reaffirm that our priority is to work for peace and call for compliance with international conventions and those. The current crisis is a result of the failure of the international community to end the occupation and implement the two-state solution. Silence in the face of illegitimate Israeli practices, whether over the past 70 years or even recently, is what led the region to the current crisis. We warn again of the possibility of a spillover of this conflict in a manner that would threaten all the people in the region and international peace and security. Mr. President, in light of the siege, the killing and the displacement and the failure of the international community until this date to call for a ceasefire and allow the entry of necessary humanitarian aid, we express discontent regarding the double standards and the selectivity in addressing this crisis. And we express our deep regret regarding this hesitation to support the right of the Palestinian people to live a dignified life or to condemn the current humanitarian tragedy that they are living under. Mr. President, safeguarding international peace and security is at the heart of the work of this organization. Today we see that the organization fails to undertake its important role with all the delays in finding a solution that addresses this crisis, and in light of the ongoing Israeli violations of international conventions, including the international humanitarian law. This undermines trust and confidence in international mechanisms and the credibility of those who defend them. This will adversely impact our capacity to safeguard international peace and security. To achieve justice and a balance should not be done through looking at things from one perspective. And here I would like to reiterate what the UN Secretary General mentioned, that it is important to acknowledge that those attacks did not come from nowhere, were not a result of a vacuum. The Palestinian people had suffered from a strangulating occupation for 56 years. The time has come for the organization to undertake and perform its responsibilities for which it was established, for the international community to take a firm and serious position to end the killing of defenseless civilians, lift the siege, and ensure the prompt entry of humanitarian and relief and aid in terms of
good news, guys.
and medicine.
I've just had a request by a visa company to become their brand ambassador. 20% commission. Meaning if I earn 10 grand a month, sorry, if I get 10 grand a month in sales, I get 2 grand. Which is good. So I'll sort out the link and I'll pop it in the chat. So I'm now brand ambassador for a visa company, and I can now issue visas.
I thank the distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia for his statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Malta.
So give me a sec. See what's going on.
Watching Al Jazeera, we're bringing you live coverage of the General Assembly emergency special session on the war in Gaza. This is day 2 of proceedings. We've been listening to some of the speakers. We've just been hearing from Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Wasil, Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the UN. I want to go to Gabriel Elizondo. He's at the UN. He's been listening to this for us. Yet again, another speech being made in support of the resolution that is being put forward today. Just for those viewers who are just joining us, Gabe, just bring us up to date with what that resolution is.
Yeah, this is a resolution that's going to be considered or is being considered by the United Nations General Assembly, all 193 members of it. We're told that this will be a vote at about 19 GMT or 3 p.m. here in New York. It's a resolution that's sponsored by Jordan and the Arab group. It has 42 co-sponsors, and it calls for, among other things, it calls for a humanitarian pause. It calls for all captives to be released, and it calls for emergency aid and humanitarian aid to get into Gaza for the people that need it the most. Now, the United States and Canada, just within the last hour or so, have confirmed that they have added an amendment to this that will also be voted upon that specifically condemns Hamas, specifically for the October 7th attack. That is not in the Jordanian draft that is being considered. While there's condemnation of the attack on October 7th, there's not specific mention of Hamas. And that is something that the U.S. and Canada both want in this resolution. And it appears that the U.S. appears that if that addendum is voted for, they will also perhaps
can't use it
resolution as well.
Because it's an affiliate link. It can't be used, but that's okay because I'll go into my website and I'll post it on my website. That's good news. Because not so long ago, I got told I was removed because of lockdown. Now I'm back, which is absolutely awesome because they provide everything I need. The links, the banners, the banners, pictures, emails, everything I need to advertise, they provide for me. This is good news. This is really good news. Yeah, this is really, really, really good news. Right.
Because something pretty important has happened in the last half hour, which is the US is now saying that it is co-sponsoring that amendment by Canada. As I understand it, this is what will happen. You'll get the amendment voted on first. So do we accept this amendment to the motion? Then you'll get the motion voted on. Either with the amendment if it's been accepted with 2/3 majority, or without the 2/3 majority. I think the intriguing scenario is if that motion, the amendment, is accepted, because that adds it into the resolution as a new bit of text condemning Hamas and condemning the taking of captives in Gaza. But it doesn't take anything out of the resolution, and the resolution does call for immediate, unhindered provision of goods and services to Gaza, including water, food, medical supplies, fuel, and electricity. Something that Israel has.
Give me a minute. I'm just uploading.
Because it says a dual-use item.
Yeah, it's no good.
An immediate, durable, and sustained humanitarian truce. If the amendment passes, then the US, one would assume, and Canada, along with other countries, will then vote for that, which is going to put immense pressure on Israel if we got a scenario where the US was voting for a resolution and Israel was not. That would really put Israel...
Well, that hasn't worked. Give me a second.
Is if that Hamas section is in the resolution, will the Arab group support it or not? I've got colleagues in New York, Gabe, and other colleagues who are ringing round people furiously to see what happens in that scenario and how they're planning to vote. Also worth telling you, we heard the European Union speaking, and although he said lots of things, he didn't say how the European Union would vote.
James, I want to interrupt you very quickly. We have our correspondent, Tariq Abu, who's on the ground in Gaza. We have seen quite a lot of attacks happening. Tariq.
Know anything about what is happening in other districts and in the territory. Maybe there are new bombardments took place in these areas. We don't know how many victims really fall due to the Israeli ongoing strikes. We can only hear bombardments everywhere, but we don't know anything about the casualties, about the situation on the ground. We don't know anything also about the medical conditions of doctors, medical workers, and even the Ashifa hospital. The situation is catastrophic right now. We cannot no longer be able to communicate with the international community, to send our voice to the world to know what is happening on the ground. I hope that this message might really reach and have an access to the world, despite all what we have experiencing throughout the last hour.
Oh, by the sound of it, they're trying to shut all the reporters down in Gaza.
If you can hear us, send that message to the world that we are isolated now in Gaza. Again, guys, if you can hear us, we are isolated in the territory. We don't have
Yeah,
phone signal.
if you guys can hear us, we are isolated in Gaza. They are trying to shut us, report us down. But as you can hear, he's live on Al Jazeera. She's getting out of control.
Everyone now is really terrified and afraid. Journalists here, even the citizens who are inside the hospital, they don't have any access to their networks. They don't have any kind of communication even with their neighbors. There is a great problem in the network connections. We don't know how it's a drop. We don't know even the situation. We don't know even if it was targeted. The situation on the ground is really terrible. Everyone is afraid. Everyone is terrified. Please, guys, if you can hear us, send this message to the world that we are becoming isolated. If you can hear us, guys, thank you so much.
That's our correspondent, Tarek Abu Azoum.
Wow.
Communication with Tarek as he was explaining there. And one of the reasons for that is because, as you might have been seeing on your screen just for the last half hour or so, there have been a significant number of Israeli aircraft which have been hitting what we
Gaza, it's like shock and awe in Iraq. They're targeting media.
Previously, we were also able to show you a live shot from Ashkelon, which is just north of Gaza. We were seeing the same impact of those explosions happening on both pictures as they were happening. These are not pictures you can see in the top left. There's another one, top right of your picture of your screen at the moment. As I say, the reason that Tarek is not able to hear us is because they have lost communication because of the strikes that you have been seeing on your screen. James, I want to come back to you. Before all of this, we were talking about the procedural system of the UN. One thing I wanted to ask you,
I get free food. Tony, I get free food. I'm a food bank. That's why it's very important that I keep the electric on. Because, first of all, I've got to make money. You know, it's all right, people giving me a job and then saying, we'll give you 20% sales, but I'm already selling language courses where I get 80% commission. So I can earn £150 from selling one language course. But I don't get any sales. Because this is what I'm saying. I'm totally isolated from the world. Because no one will help me.
So I think there is something significant going on, and may I add, that may be why you're seeing these awful pictures of
I get free food because I'm a food bank. So Tesco's provide me with food every so often. Plus, there's 3 apps online where you can pick up free food daily. My electric, no one pays that. I think I've just been told I may get the £150 warm home discount, but that's not even going to clear my arrears, let alone.
Interesting because it shows the temperature of the world on this issue. But you also have, and one of the speeches we didn't cover was from the
No, it's not a Visa card, it's visas. I'm now selling visas, meaning if you want to go to Israel, you can click on the link in my website and you can apply for a visa for Israel. And we'll sort everything out for you. Yeah, it's all hell in Gaza. Welcome to Shock and Awe from Gaza.
Taking into consideration everything James has said, we also had some news earlier on, reports that apparently
There's too much going on today.
Ostensibly, we're told at an advanced stage with regards to a possible ceasefire. We have no details about that. We have no timeline. We have no details about that, and also possibly with regard to the exchange of captives. Again, given what James has said, do you think that there is any coincidence at all between what we're just talking about and the fact that
what's going on?
No, I think what we're seeing is very much in line with how Israel has behaved.
Give me a second.
It's very dismissive of the international community, of the international law, and the ambassador said as much in his own speech. It's very much about us, the Jews, us, the Israelis, the rest of the world matter, doesn't really matter. But when it comes to the agreement for ceasefire versus release of hostages, and I think this is very important to maybe highlight, that the presentation by the U.S. Referred to hostages as if they were all civilian hostages. The majority of those captured by Hamas are military, and they can be considered prisoners of war because the war.
Thank you. Finally, someone's listening to me. Finally, the media listening to me. These are prisoners of war. I've been saying that for weeks now. Once Israel declared war on a mass, all the kidnappees became prisoners of war, not kidnapped, not hostages, not human shields. They are now prisoners of war. So the Geneva Convention kicks in. I'm ex-forces. I'm ex-British Armed Forces. I know how it works. Whoa. Right, guys. I'm going to keep talking, but I'm going to forget the website for a minute, and I'm going to let you watch the TV. This is Israel's response to a ceasefire and aid going in from Egypt today. Israel are animals.
Similar to what maybe Hamas, the way they approached at the beginning, based on humanitarian basis, they released the first.
And let me just post, and then I'll switch.
U.S. dual nationals, and then they released another two. They're all women. They all had a health issue, and so on. This kind of arrangement needs to be done, I think, soon, and has to be reflected.
If I get $2,500 worth of business, they'll give me a $500 bonus. So there's my target, 2,500 in sales.
No one has called on the U.S. to de-escalate. I mean, they brought in their military, they raised the temperature in the region. We know the Russians are also in the East Mediterranean. The opportunity of things go wrong accidentally is huge now. I mean, the airliners that are flying over this.
Right, hold on. I'm just posting to 209 million people, maybe 109 million if I'm lucky, and I'll change the camera around because this is nasty. I need the other computer.
I want to widen out just a little bit. We are looking quite far ahead, but we've heard from the ambassador, the Saudi Arabian ambassador to the UN just beforehand.
Watch the screen, guys. You won't see this on other feeds.
Why Hamas decided to carry out its attack at this point is because they were working towards a normalization.
What's the top screen? Oh, Ascalon, Israel, Gaza, and thing. That's why they put exclusive at the top. Most of the cameras in Gaza are owned by